Okay, enough of bird's eye view talk. Let's get back to the application and connecting our client application with our Walacor instance finally. So prerequisites to this, we just want to make sure that we've launched our Walacor application. So we use that npx create Walacor app earlier in this series. We've also ensured that we've configured our authentication with Clerk. Okay, let's dive in. So pulling up that previous project that we had and just looking at the .env file and the previous project that I'm referring to, if we go ahead and run dev, so I'll go up to the terminal, npm run dev, and if I pull up localhost 3000, this is going to be that previous application here that we had seen on the client side. So it's time to make everything work. And in order to do that, we just need to, I'm going to shrink VS Code a little bit, but we just need to make sure that all of these things are configured here. So let's go ahead and do that. And the good news is we now have access to all. I mean, we have our EC2 instance with the URL. We have our username and password. The ETIDs we haven't covered yet, but that is how we define our schema. So I'll explain that in a moment. And this is all the same information that we just used to configure our S3 bucket in the Walacor dashboard. Except we're going to do a different bucket for this one because this bucket is just dedicated to image storage. So it's a little bit different, but let's go ahead and dive in. So if I go to the dashboard now, we could see that we don't have any access to the information here. It's all just going to say fetching, fetching, fetching because the Walacor instance isn't linked up. So let's go ahead and link that up. I'll go back to AWS. Let me sign in. And I want to go to that AP East Singapore location. And I want to go to my instance here and select my instance is running. And I selected my instance running. And I want to go to my public IPv4 address. So I want to copy this down here. And again, this is how we access our instance here. So I just want to take that same instance and put it just right here. So http/my instance ID. And for the username, we have admin. And for the password, I just had password. So it's that easy to access our instance. Now our ETIDs, these things are a little bit interesting. Our ETID is how we're going to define each schema to the database. So on that previous episode, how I talked about how there's blueprints, imagine a blueprint has a name for a greenhouse, right? It would be blueprint number 1 for the greenhouse in the neighborhood if we're building houses. Maybe for a red house, it would be blueprint number 2. And maybe for a blue house, it would be blueprint number 3. So the ETID is very similar to that. It's just a number dedicated to that blueprint or that schema. So I'll go ahead and just add a random ETID here. It just needs to be a number above 50 and below 1,000,000, I believe. So I'll add 7892. That works for me. And profile ETD, I'll do 987654. And role ETID, we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, these are just random numbers between, they need to be above 50 because the first 50 ETIDs, I believe, are dedicated to the Walacor platform for admin opcodes, but outside of that, the rest is free range for us to play with. So let's go ahead and use these ETID numbers or any that you feel subjugated to. And I can go to my Walacor platform or the dashboard on the client side, and I can go ahead and refresh this, and it should initialize the application for us. So let's wait. And you can see it's checking for permissions. Oh, you know what? We may need to restart the server. I believe we need to do that. So let me cut down the terminal, npm run dev, and try this once more. I'll refresh once more. And we can see our dashboard is being initialized. Now, I had the great fortune of building this SDK. So what I'm doing on the back end now for this SDK is actually building out the schemas for you. And you can see all this information gets pulled in from Clerk automatically. So here's my first name, last name, and the role assigned to me. Now let's go ahead and poke around in the dashboard. We can review the schemas page. you can see here it says I need to assign an admin role with admin access. So let's click this. Actually, it'll take us back to the profile page. You can see the role that I am as viewer. Now I want to add a new role, so I'll select this button here. And the role I'll say is admin. And scope, I want admin access, so I'll add role. And I want to assign a role, so it'll take me back to the profile page. And I can go ahead and select admin and update the profile. We are now an admin on the client dashboard. And just before we head off to the next episode, I can actually go back to that Walacor dashboard. Now this is the back end. So this application is just a client-side application. This is now our server-side application. And if I select platform, I can go over here to the left on schema. And I have these families, these roles, or excuse me, these families. There's a blog family, a role family, and a profile family. Let's review some of our data. These families are just kind of collections of these things. So maybe I have different profiles, maybe I have different roles, maybe I have different blogs. But let's select the blog or the profile family. If I select profile and finally scroll over to the right and review the data, we can see that data that is now updated here. So I have my first name, my last name, my user ID, and user role, and as well when that user was created. So that's just a little bit about the backend data for Walacor. Let's head to the next episode.